Revenge films.
I was living with my wife working as a salaryman at a company. But lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might be cheating on me. 3 years into our marriage, my work started getting busier and I gradually became less present for her. I had noticed her growing distant around that time. I knew I wasn't blameless. I was working hard for our household, but in doing so, I neglected her. Even so, I loved her and tried my best to balance work and home life. That's why the thought of her cheating on me was so painful. My suspicions deepened one day when she went to the convenience store on her day off. While she was out, her phone rang, and I happened to find it lying around. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. It was an incoming call from Manager Smith. My heart skipped a beat. I had heard about Manager Smith before. He was someone from her work. However, he wasn't her direct supervisor. He was a department head at a company they did business with. Would someone like that normally call her on her day off? Then one evening, I got off work early due to feeling unwell. I usually worked late, but that day I came home around 8 p.m. My wife, who should have been home by then, was nowhere to be found. If she had plans, she would typically let me know. At that moment, my suspicions turned into certainty. When she finally returned, I confronted her, and she admitted it without hesitation.
Yes, I'm sorry.
She told me that her relationship with Manager Smith had actually started a year before we got married. It began when she made a mistake at work and he covered for her. She treated him to tea as a thank you, and things escalated from there. In fact, Manager Smith was 17 years older than both me and my wife. On top of that, he had a 37-year-old wife and a 17-year-old daughter. Hearing my wife's confession, I felt an overwhelming wave of nausea.
I loved how kind and caring you were, but the manager, he's manly and has something you don't. That's why. I'm sorry.
The moment I heard those words, my love for her vanished. And to think she had been involved with him even before we got married, that was beyond disgusting. If I had known, I would have never married her. The divorce process was over in no time, and of course I made sure to get compensation from both my ex-wife and that bastard of a manager. My former in-laws were shocked to learn that she had continued the affair even after our marriage and apologized to me over and over. In the end, they cut ties with her as well, but by that point I didn't care anymore. At the time, I was obviously devastated, but the ones who suffered the most were the manager's wife and daughter. His wife fell into depression, growing visibly frail, while his daughter completely lost it, storming into his office and exposing the affair for everyone to see. As a result, the manager was demoted and transferred to a run-down branch in the countryside. It was disappointing that he wasn't outright fired, but at least he disappeared from my sight, which was good enough for me. My ex-wife, on the other hand, lost her job and was disowned by her family. She had no choice but to follow that bastard and cling to him. 3 years passed. My wounds healed, and I was lucky enough to meet and marry a wonderful woman. Work was going well, and my new wife supported me wholeheartedly. Life was smooth sailing. One day, I was visiting my wife's grandmother. On the way, we stopped by a DIY store, and that's when I saw them. 2 people I never wanted to see again. It was my ex-wife. I had already realized after getting married that my wife's grandmother happened to live in the same area where that bastard had been transferred. But running into them today, just my luck. As I was processing the unpleasant coincidence, the manager noticed me. He grinned and walked over. "We've already paid the compensation, so there's no need to be so distant, is there?" he said smugly. Honestly, I had no desire to talk to him. I didn't even want to remember those days. But for some reason, he seemed determined to keep me there. Meanwhile, my ex-wife looked uncomfortable, tugging at his arm and saying, "Let's just go." But he didn't budge. Instead, he smirked and said, "How have you been? As you can see, I'm doing great. Work's going well, too. I'm really sorry that I ended up taking your wife, but, well, what can you do, right?" He was trying to rub it in. It was written all over his face. He wanted to bask in the feeling of superiority, convincing himself that even though he had been forced to pay compensation, he was still the one who ended up happier. This guy was the textbook definition of a prideful man. He saw everything as a competition, and as long as he was the winner, he couldn't care less about anyone else. I had sensed it even back when we discussed the divorce. Seeing me remain silent, he grew even more pleased with himself. "I'm really sorry that I ended up being the only one who found happiness," he sneered. "Or maybe, are you all alone now? Feeling lonely?" He chuckled. What a pathetic excuse for a man. I couldn't for the life of me understand why my ex-wife had been drawn to someone like him. Well, not that it mattered anymore. Just then my phone rang. I took the call, conveniently cutting him off mid-sentence. When asked where I was, I replied that I was near the entrance. The bastard smirked. "A friend?" he asked, still grinning. But the moment he saw the person approaching me, his face twisted in shock. Why the hell are you here?"
What? Why are you here?
His expression contorted with rage as he turned to me, demanding an explanation. So I gave him one. "Oh, right. I suppose no one told you since your daughter cut ties with you, but we got married." I gestured toward my wife, his very own daughter. His face turned red with fury. "What the hell? I won't allow this! Why would you marry him? Break up with him right now!" But my wife simply shot him a cold stare and said,
I already cut ties with you. You have no right to tell me what to do. You are nothing to me.
Yes, after everything that happened, I had grown closer to both his ex-wife and daughter. We were all hurting, and somewhere along the way, his daughter and I developed feelings for each other. I won't lie, at first, part of me saw it as revenge. I wondered if making his daughter fall for me would be the perfect way to get back at him. But over time, that feeling completely disappeared. Before I knew it, I had fallen in love with her for real. Of course, I told her everything. She just laughed and said, "I kind of figured," before adding, "But if we fell in love, then there's nothing we can do about it, right?" As the bastard trembled with rage, another figure stepped forward from behind, my mother-in-law. The moment he saw her, his eyes widened in shock, but she, on the other hand, simply looked at him with a cold, detached expression. Even after the divorce, he still acted as if my wife and her mother were his possessions. He shouted that he wouldn't allow this, but my mother-in-law dismissed him without a second thought. "We're nothing to you anymore. It's none of your business." That didn't stop him from throwing a tantrum in the middle of the hardware store, yelling about how I had stolen his family. Stolen? What a joke. My ex-wife, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Seeing me with my wife, who was much younger and far more beautiful, clearly hit her hard. Not surprising. 3 years had passed since then. The bastard, who had already looked like an old man back then, had only aged further into middle age. Maybe he'd let himself go after securing my ex-wife, because now his gut was bulging and his receding hairline had become even more obvious. And then came the finishing blow. My wife turned to my ex and said with a sweet smile,
Thanks to your affair, I was able to marry a truly wonderful husband. So, really, thank you.
My ex-wife's face turned beet red. I knew my wife had said it as a playful little revenge, so I gave her a firm nod before turning my back on them and walking away. The bastard screamed behind me, "Stay away from them!" But sorry, pal, you lost the right to say that a long time ago. Later, I heard through the grapevine that his whole successful career story was a complete lie. In reality, he was isolated at work, treated like a joke by his subordinates. As for my ex-wife, she had apparently wanted kids, but given that the bastard was 17 years older than her, the chances of that happening were slim. She was miserable about it. Meanwhile, my wife's belly had begun to round. She was carrying our child. My ex-wife didn't say a word when she saw it, but I could tell she knew. The maternity dress my wife was wearing made it obvious. She must have realized and stayed silent because she knew she could never have the same. Not long after that, I heard that the two of them had broken up. One had become a balding, overweight, middle-aged man. The other had no money and was living a pitiful, shabby life. Honestly, serves them right.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.